How should you build Navia? It depends. She has pretty different preferences in terms of builds depending on whether you want to use her as an off-field DPS strictly or as an on-field DPS. In this video we're going to take a look at both. First of all, the off-field DPS scenario refers to a case where you simply use her skill 3 times a rotation and her burst once a rotation and nothing else. It's not full off-field of course, because you need to go on-field to use her elemental skill, but you know what I'm saying. In this scenario, the skill will deal the vast majority of her damage, so you need to build her accordingly. Artifacts wise, she comes with a new artifact set, which is obviously made for her specifically. The 2-piece effect will be buffing her attack percent, while the 4-piece effect will be buffing her geo damage bonus when she uses her elemental skill, and then this buff will last and will get better while she has a crystallized shield active. Pretty straightforward, and it ties on her needing crystallizes to work in the first place. Expectedly, this artifact set is just better than other options, although she does have some pretty nice alternatives here. Above all, the obvious golden troop set, which is the signature elemental skill set, and for a character who mostly deals damage through the elemental skill, this is great. For this very reason, it does speak volumes for the new set to surpass the Golden Troop, and it's pretty impressive considering it's not specifically tied to elemental skill damage. So it will translate well if you decide to use some of her normal attacks even in this scenario. For the rest, we're not exactly looking at anything specific since she is an attack percent scaling unit, so she can't use the Husk set for example, and for the other alternatives it's mostly geo and geo pieces or attack percent pieces, something like that. The interesting thing here is that since she has a mechanic that allows her to absorb the surrounding crystallized shards with elemental skill, the Petra artifact set becomes very relevant. Not relevant in the sense it surpasses other options in terms of Navia damage, because after all it is a supportive set, and this very nature could make it better than the other alternatives on very specific themes, specifically mono element themes where this mono element is either electro, pyro, hydro or cryo, and it is dealing in terms of characters the majority of the team damage. In this scenario, buffing 1 or 2 characters by 35% damage bonus will likely be more relevant than buffing Navia by a higher amount. Please don't ask me about the tenacity of Millilith set. The elemental skill has only 1 hit per usage, so it is not usable. Don't ask me about it, please. Just kidding, you can ask. At your own risk though. Let me remind you all that if you enjoy my work in meteoric crafting, you can show your support by subscribing and leaving a thumbs up and also following me on Twitter. Stats wise, in terms of optimization for offensive purposes, she is the most common unit ever. She wants attack percent, damage bonus and crit. The thing to keep in mind here though are the energy requirements. She is a character that fundamentally relies on her 60 coast elemental burst to deal most of her damage, because that's what will allow her elemental skill to gain the stacks. Basically, something like bursting every other rotation is completely out of question. Luckily, her particle generation shouldn't be that bad. We don't have exact info on it, but we can make pretty solid assumptions, and based on these assumptions, the scenario looks pretty okay. She has a 9 seconds long cooldown on her elemental skill, and she has 2 charges on it, which allows her to use it 3 times a rotation for the first 2 rotations of an abyss room. So if you're sure you can clear an abyss room in the first 2 rotations, then her energy requirements will be lower than if you can't. Of course, it fluctuates. It depends on what her teams are and whether she has a second geo unit on team or not, but for the most part it's not tragic at all. You will need to use an energy recharge stance or an energy recharge weapon, but that's not news for sub DPS characters. Let's take a look at her weapons now, and of course the signature is the best option since it's tailor-made for her. It comes with a critical rate substat, an attack percent passive, and also elemental skill bonuses, so it's perfect. Additionally, we're getting a free-to-play weapon, which is nice for her, and funnily enough, it gets stronger the more you complete an exploration-based quest. Specifically, it has an attack percent passive, and this bonus will get higher the more medicines you help in the overworld, so get to exploring, man. For the rest, pretty regular. She has a lot of 5-star options that are not perfect fits, but of course still very nice since they're 5 stars with high stats and good passives. Also, she has Serpent Spine, which is still a banger for a character that can keep all of the stacks, and that is the case for a sub DPS. Energy recharge options are of course very useful because, as I implied earlier, she will need all of the energy they provide. But now let's talk about the on-field style of play and what are the best builds. In the previous video I made, I said it is not a preferred style of play of mine for Navia specifically, but it's worth considering since it's something in her kit, and these are the builds. I'm assuming she gets 2 full windows of Geo Infusion for the on-field play, and that should be around 8 normal attacks in total, which isn't that impressive in terms of relative damage. By this I mean her elemental skill will still deal the majority of her damage, while the normal attacks are a minor part. Better than the burst, but not especially relevant. Still, the on-field play does give her access to new artifacts in some scenarios. For example, the Marashu set, which she can use if she's also using Furina on the team. This set is obviously very powerful, because it not only benefits the normal and charge attack, but also the entirety of the kit, thanks to its crit rate bonuses. It is not decisively stronger than her signature set, but it competes pretty evenly, which gives her a pretty strong alternative. Obviously, a one-trick pony like the Golden Troop set, which only buffs her elemental skill, falls off in this scenario. Options like Shimenawa or the Bolide set are not worth it because they specifically buff her normal attack damage, which, as I said earlier, is not the majority of the damage she will deal even in this scenario. So, if you want my take, just farm for a signature set, which is excellent in both scenarios. Artifacts wise, pretty similar to the case before, so attack percent, damage bonus, crit for the offensive stat, and the only real difference is that her energy requirements get lower. This is because when you play her on field, she will be getting all the particles her elemental skill will generate directly, while if you play her as a sub DPS, you will switch out right after the elemental skill usage, and those particles will go to other characters directly. The teams I'm using for the energy calculations are not teams I've calculated the total damage of, they're just samples I've used to estimate the energy requirements for Navia on a team-wide scale. Weapons wise, her signature gets a bit weaker since its passive mostly buffs elemental skill damage, and that doesn't translate that well in this case where she also deals normal attack damage. Conversely, other 5-star options that rely on her staying on field or dealing normal attacks get better, so for example the Unforged. For the rest, she will still need a bit of energy, so energy options are not bad, and the Serpent Spine stays strong if you use a shielder on the team like Zhongli, since that will make its stacks more consistent on Navia. So overall, just a few closing thoughts. Regarding her signature, I wouldn't say it's that worth to pull it for now, because in the case of the sub DPS scenario, since her total damage won't be that high and she won't contribute particularly much to the whole team damage, then the advantage it has over other options is not that impressive. Even in the other scenario, there are plenty options that can be solid alternative to it, so definitely don't feel like it's a must pull for her. As a whole, pretty easy character to build.